To get a sharp knife, you have to abrade away material. When you're using a knife, the knife gets rounded and dulled, and what you want to do is you want to abrade away material, steel or whatever the blade material is, until it gets razor sharp. Now what I've got in here is I'm going to give you, let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got 3 or 4 different types of sharpening systems, and these are probably the most popular sharpening systems that you're going to run into. And so we'll give you a real quick demonstration on all of these things. The first one is the old traditional stone. Now I've got it's an old buck knife. It was probably made by Smith's, and it's got a coarse stone, a medium stone, and a fine stone. And you always start the coarsest one you can possibly get. If it's really dull and really rounded off, you want to start real to the coarsest stone. Now, when I always do it, I'll start and find out under a sharp, bright light. And what I do is I always look down and I go, okay, if I can see a bright line down, shining right back up at me, that means the knife is dull. If I just see a dark line, that means that the knife is relatively sharp. But if I see a little shiny specks shining up at me, that tells me that the light is reflecting back, and that means it's rounded off. So it's not sharp. So I purposely dulled this thing so it's pretty dull. Now these are what you call the flat stones, and you can use water. Sorry, you can use any kind of oil. It's a lubricant just to keep the stone and the steel lubricated. You don't want the steel and the stone port to plug up the pores. You want to keep them open so that they cut. Those are the things that actually cut. And what you do, there's several different ways to do it, and I'll show you several of them. This is the one that I like best. Now I like this bright light. And you put the knife down flat, and right at the edge you'll see a little dark line. There's going to be a shadow underneath there. And you keep on raising that up until that shadow goes away. And that means that your cantle is flat on the stone. If there's a shadow underneath there, there's room that the shadow can show. So I'm bringing it up until the shadow disappears. And on these coarse stones, you can really bear down hard. Now, I'm going to move to the medium stone. And again, the same thing. Go underneath the light, and if you see a shadow, you bring it up until the shadow disappears. And now you're at the proper angle. If you're having problems, you don't have a bright light, one of the things, old tricks that a lot of people use to help is you take a Sharpie or any magic marker and you magic marker the entire candle in black or whatever color you want. And then as you're moving back and forth, you'll see what areas of the candle are being abraded off and what areas of the candle are being left. And that's just a good, nice little telltale to show that you're actually removing material or you're not removing material. The theory I always teach people is that when you're sharpening a knife, you're almost like trying to slice off a thin layer of this sharpening stone. And you should be starting to get smoother, finer and finer on that. And now we're going to move to the fine stone. Now, we use a lot of 1095 Crovan, which is a great steel, and it's an easy steel to sharpen on these stones. You know, our knives are probably at about like 57, 58, 59, and the stones are at Rockwell C, and the stones are probably at in the 90s. So they are harder, so they will abrade away the steel. But you know, some of these super steels that are coming out with that we're going to start to use, and we are using, like D2 and some of the other steels, are have another property called abrasion resistance, and it has nothing to necessarily to do with hardness, but it has ability. It's the composition of the steel, and they have the ability to resist abrasion. D2 is famous for having real high abrasion resistance, and sometimes these stones don't work. And if you use these stones with a D2 knife or an S30V knife, or you'll be there a long time. And what we always tell people is you got to move to ceramic or diamond sharpeners. This is the first way of doing it. This is the old traditional way of sharpening a knife, and you know, if you really want to be a knife person, you got to learn how to sharpen on these things. The Lansky is great if you've never sharpened a knife, and you really don't want to spend the time to master a knife sharpening on the stones. And what it does is it has this thing that you clamp onto the back of the knife, and I clamped it on, and then it's got these rods that you, and these stones, and you start with a coarse stone, and basically what you do is, depending on what angles you want, you slide it in here, and we'll keep it at like 20. That seems to be. And now you just got to do even. Now the best thing to do is you got to work evenly both sides. So if I do 10 strokes on the left side, I got to do 10 strokes on the right side. And the same principles apply. You start with the coarser stones, and then you work your way up to a finer stone. If it's really dull, you got to start right back at the coarsest stone. If it's not, you know, you've had a little bit of use, but it's not really bad, you can use intermediate stones and work your way back up to the final stone. If in doubt, always go back. If you're sitting there and you go, it doesn't feel like it's working, go back to a coarser stone. And some of these synthetic stones are a little easier. You don't need quite so much oil or lubrication on it because they tend to be a little more porous, so they don't plug up nearly as badly as some of the natural stones like the Washita. So you just keep on going to the finer and finer stones until you get it razor sharp. Got two ceramic carbide angles crossed like that, and so you drag your candle down through, and it starts to peel off your edges, and you can hear it. You can actually hear it, and it's. And then on this side, you flip it around, and there's a fine side, and it's got two white fine ceramic in there that sort of polishes the edge. We feel the optimal knife angles is 30 degrees for your fine knives. That's 15, 15, 30 included, which means both sides of the candle. That's 60 degrees. Or on our combat knives or on the Becker knives, probably 40 degrees, 20 and 20, 20 per side. So if here's the center line of the blade, here's 20 degrees here, center line 20 degrees, 40 included. Okay. The one that I have really spent a lot of time with, and I like it because it is so intuitive and so neat, and it makes it real easy, is the Spyderco triangle. It's called the Triangle Sharp Maker, and he calls it the triangles because he's got these triangular rods. He has a triangular thing, so if you have a serration, these little corners will get inside to the serrations. Here's a D2 Extreme that's got the serrations in it, and I'll show you how to do it. We'll just, it's not real sharp. So we'll start right from the get-go. Now, one of the neat things, you just hold this knife straight up and down and just pull down. Gives me something to grab onto. And I'm not doing the serrations yet. But it just shows you, just keep this thing up straight, vertical. Now for the serrations, let me show you how you work it. You work down. From this side. See, the serrations get into that little pointed area. Just moving along very nicely. And on the Spyderco, you always go coarse, medium, fine, but you go coarse on the edges, then on the flats. Then you can twist these around and turn them on the flats. Now when you're on the flats, you can't use the serration. This is a fine diamond tip file. Let's see if that helps any. It might not. There you go. Basically, it was just a burr, and this diamond on the and under the microscope. You know, here's your two candles, and there'll be this little burr sticking up, and it gets flipped from one side to the other side, or it gets high-speed buffed off or braided off. And so sometimes that little burr isn't gone all the way, and so you just need to do a little finer job, and then it'll start to cut again. Now, one of the final steps that you do is you have a strop, and this is my dad's old from the 20s and 30s, an old razor strop that you hang on the wall. I don't know if there's a, and this has got leather and real fine polishing compound, and then it's just a matter of and that helps remove that little burr. There's a coarse side, and then there's a fine side. Basically, I just use the fine side. The other thing you can use is, you know, the corrugated cardboard, you know, the cardboard with the little corrugations in between. Mm-hmm. You can do the same thing with that. Just what is called a strop, and you're just sort of taking that little real fine razor burr off, so that you got a totally cut through edge. And that's it, real quick. In order to get good at it, you're going to have to sharpen knives. So you start out with all your dull kitchen knives, and you just start working on them. I always tell people, if you want to sharpen your knife and you want to do it right, you got to be in a relaxed mood. You can't be in a rush mood. You got to have the time to do it. A lot of people say, yeah, okay, I'm going to get all my camping stuff and hunting stuff thrown away, and so they're rushed, they're hurried, and they try and do it, and they always end up with a butchered blade. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of concentration. Consistency is the name of the game. Bring that up and always hold that blade consistent time after time. And if you can do that, you can sharpen a knife.